Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for an advanced copy of her statement, and I join with her in condemning the car bomb attack we've seen in Londonderry at the weekend, and commend the emergency services and the local community for their response. Mr. Speaker, the huge achievement of the Good Friday Agreement in reducing violence in Northern Ireland must never be taken for granted. It was an historic step forward, but we cannot take it for granted. The government still appears not to have come to terms with the scale of the defeat in the House of Commons last week. The Prime Minister seems to be going through the motions of accepting the result, but in reality is in deep denial. The logic of that decisive defeat is that the Prime Minister must change her red lines because her current deal is undeliverable. So can she be clear and explicit with the House? Which of her red lines is she prepared to move on? The Prime Minister's invitation to talks have been exposed as a PR sham. Every opposition party politician came out of those meetings with the same response. Contrary to what the Prime Minister has just said, there was no flexibility, there were no negotiations, nothing has changed.
Order. The Prime Minister was heard, and when there was noise, I called for it to stop, and the same must apply to the Leader of the Opposition. No one in this chamber will shout the right honourable gentleman down. Don't even bother trying, you're wasting your breath. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I do welcome the commitment that the fee for EU citizens to apply for settled status will be waived. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was fond of saying that this is the best possible deal on the table. It is the only possible deal on the table. But our EU negotiating partners are clear, and I quote, "Unanimously, the European Council have always said that if the UK chooses to shift its red lines in the future to go beyond a simple free trade agreement, then the EU will be immediately ready to give a favourable response." The House voted to hold the referendum. It also voted to trigger Article 50. There is a clear majority of this House to support a deal in principle and to respect the referendum result. But it requires the Prime Minister to face reality and accept her deal has been comprehensively defeated. Instead, we now understand the Prime Minister is going back to Europe to seek concessions on the backstop. Can I ask the Prime Minister this? What is the difference between legal assurances and concessions? What makes her think that what she tried to negotiate in December will succeed in January? Mr. Speaker, this really does feel a bit like Groundhog Day. So, the first thing she must do is recognise the clear majority in this House against leaving without a deal and rule out no deal and stop the colossal waste of public money planning for an outcome. Questions too must be asked of the Chancellor. He reassured businesses that no deal would be ruled out by the Commons, yet he is sanctioning £4.2 billion to be spent on an option he believes will be ruled out. The Foreign Secretary said last week it was very unrealistic to believe the House of Commons would not find a way to block no deal. Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Prime Minister to meet first with her Chancellor and her Foreign Secretary and see if they can convince her to do what is in her power to rule out no deal? And if she will not do that now, will she confirm to the House that if an amendment passes that rules out no deal, she will implement that instruction? The Prime Minister agreed the backstop because of her pledge to the people of Northern Ireland to avoid a hard border. But no deal would mean a hard border in Ireland and break the Prime Minister's commitment. Is she seriously willing to accept a hard border? But today heralds the start of a democratic process where this House will debate amendments that will determine how we navigate Brexit. Of course the government tried to block us ever getting to this stage. They wanted us to have no democratic scrutiny whatsoever. Labour set out, and I believe there may be a majority in the House, for such a proposal for a new comprehensive customs union with the EU that would include a say, a strong single market deal that delivers frictionless trade, and ensure no race to the bottom on workers' rights or indeed any other of the important regulations and protections we have. We will, as we've said consistently from the beginning, back amendments that seek to rule out the disaster of no deal. And, as we've said, will not rule out the option of a public vote. So, Mr. Speaker, no more phony talks. Parliament will debate and decide. And this time, Mr. Speaker, I hope and expect the government to listen to this House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just say to the right honourable gentleman, he says no more phony talks. It would be nice just to have some talks with him on this issue. He makes lots of claims about what has been said in the talks that have been held so far, but actually he doesn't know, because he didn't turn up to those talks. And I come back to him, he makes a great deal about the issue of no deal. He said that there is a consensus. I think he said there was a view across this House that supported a deal in principle and wanted to deliver on Brexit. That's exactly what I want to sit down and talk to him about. Because what we need to see is what is it that will secure the support of this House to enable us to leave the European Union with a deal. And we are continuing to listen to groups across the House in order to find the way to secure that support. Now, he talks about ruling out no deal. As I said in my statement, there are only two ways that you can ensure that no deal does not happen. One is to revoke Article 50, to reverse the decision of the referendum and to stay in the European Union. That would be a betrayal of the referendum decision that was taking place in 2016. And the other way is to agree a deal with the European Union. And it is precisely about finding a way that we can secure the support of this House for a deal that I'm talking with members across the House about and want to talk with the right honourable gentleman about. So I hope, from what he said today, that he will reconsider his decision not to attend those talks. He complained about the amount of money that was being spent. He talked about £4.2 billion being spent and how that money should actually be spent in other ways. I see the Labour Party have put out a press release saying that money should be spent in other ways. What the right honourable gentleman might not have noticed is that actually that £4.2 billion is not all money that's being spent on no deal. If we stop spending that money, then we wouldn't be prepared for a deal either. So he needs to recognise that actually government has to spend money to ensure that we are in a position, whatever the outcome of the negotiations with the European Union, whether we leave with a deal or in a no-deal circumstance. So I say once again to the right honourable gentleman and across the House, for those who are concerned about no deal, that means we should be leaving with a deal. But what we need to find is the way that this House we can secure the support of this House for a deal. What has been clear from the discussions that we have had so far is the wide variety of views that are held around this House on this issue. But when it comes to it, we all need to be able to look our constituents in the eye and say that we did the right thing by them. That is leaving with a deal that ensures we deliver on the referendum and protect their jobs. That is what the government is about, that is what we're working on, and that is what we will deliver.